Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Mark Givler. Got Kevin Noon with me here again today. There is a lot that's going on right now with recruiting. Visits have reemerged here over the last week or two. They're going to continue in a big way over the next month. But today, I think we want to get into a couple of position groups because there's two position groups right now that have been thrown into a little bit of, let's say, uncertainty. I think chaos might be too strong. A little bit of uncertainty based on coaches shuffling around. And those are, that's quarterback for 2026 and running back for 2025. Obviously, Ohio State with Chip Kelly now, different set of eyes on the offense. Going to see some new names emerge on the quarterback recruiting front. And we've had some developments there over the past week. And then running back recruiting is an ongoing development, of course, with Tony Alford leaving for Michigan unexpectedly and Ohio State, trying to, I guess, reshuffle its board, figure out who's, still in play, who's not, who they maybe need to turn the heat up on. So we're going to talk about both of those today. Let's start with quarterback. I guess the biggest news of the week is Jared Curtis committing to the University of Georgia. Not going to take that Ohio State visit on April 1st. This just feels like, is this the end of the roller coaster, or is this just another hill on the roller coaster before we go down and, throw our arms up and go, wee?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know necessarily which direction it's going to be because of how modern recruiting is. And it used to be, there certainly was a group of players that would go through and commit and then recommit and everything else. And with Jared Curtis, when Ohio State made its changes, when Corey Dennis was not renewed, I mean, that all seemed to lose momentum. And then Ohio State brings in Chip Kelly. It seems like things maybe got back on track, but it at no point did it derail what UGA was doing in terms of recruiting him. And that probably was the biggest thing. You lose a little bit of momentum, and sometimes it's hard to get back up to speed. What happens moving forward? I don't know. Does USC hold on to its quarterback commitment and Julian Lewis? Does Julian Lewis up and change his mind and go to UGA? And how does that change 26 and moving forward? I don't know at that point, but I do think that there's something to be said about Ohio State having to cast maybe a little bit of a wider net. I mean, and that doesn't mean that they still aren't very enthralled with Will Griffin. And I don't want to get into a lot of names yet because I know we're going to get into that, but I don't think anybody wants to see a situation of where Ohio State gets too tunnel visioned with one guy and then you end up having to scramble. And no offense to this player, but Stephen Collier never was really a candidate to see significant playing time at Ohio State. And you just can't afford that, especially now in this movement era that we live in.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point there with Juju Lewis, because I think Georgia thinks they're getting Juju Lewis. And so you wonder what domino effect that could maybe have with someone like Jared Curtis. The other side of that is, does Ohio State hang around in that one long enough to find out? Or do they just say, look, didn't get you. We got some other guys here we're going to pursue, and that's kind of that. So that'll be interesting to kind of follow here the next couple months if they keep in touch with Jared Curtis or not. And then, obviously what Juju decides to do. But again, I think Georgia thinks they're getting him. And, if Georgia thinks they're getting an in-state kid, that's probably pretty good, probably pretty well-sourced information. So we'll see. Curtis this was a roller coaster the last 3 or 4 months. And it's, I'm not saying that to bash the kid. I mean, a lot happened for him as far as coaching movement and things like that. There, you develop a relationship with Corey Dennis. He's not kept. Then they immediately get Bill O'Brien, and then he's gone in 2 weeks. I mean, that would give a lot of people cold feet, I think. I think that's a fair statement. I don't think getting cold feet about Ohio State in the midst of all that is a wrong thing. I think that most of us would have felt that way. But then it was going to be, he was going to slow down, and he was going to commit to Georgia at the end of February. And then I was like, no, I'm going to slow down. Then he's going to visit schools he hadn't seen before, but he's also going to get back to Ohio State. And it's, oh, no, I'm just going to commit to Georgia. So this has shown to be volatile. And so I think with that in mind, if you think Jared Curtis is the best quarterback in the country, you should probably stick around and just kind of keep at that one just to kind of see. But obviously you do have to cast a wider net. And we'll get into that now. So they've offered 2 new quarterbacks in the past week. The first one is Dia Bell out of a program Ohio State fans have come to love, American Heritage, down in South Florida. So he is Malachi Tony's quarterback in 2026, a receiver they're trying to flip from Miami. So that gets interesting. Dia camped last summer, and I've talked to his dad, and I talked to Dia quite a bit as well, but I've talked to his dad quite a bit. His dad played for the Philadelphia 76ers, the world-famous Philadelphia 76ers, among several other lesser NBA franchises. So the athletic genes are there. I've received a couple good Allen Iverson stories, which we won't get into right now. But he's kind of guiding the process. It's a different world for him coming from basketball, but it's a really good family. His dad Raja was a pro, so they handle the media well. They handle the attention well. Like they very mature people. So I think this offer was going to happen no matter what. The visit had already been scheduled. Like nothing happened because Jared Curtis hadn't committed anywhere yet. I'm 95% certain they were going to offer Dia Bell this past week, no matter what Jared Curtis's status was. But we saw him at camp last summer. He plays basketball too, like his dad, but obviously he's focused on football for the next level. So they are looking for that mobility. Had a big year at American Heritage. Kevin, you've seen him a little bit less than I have. I just actually saw him a few weeks ago, but just look if you can remember a camp or if you checked out his film since they've offered him or anything. What are your thoughts on this, and just maybe even how it could influence Malachi Tony?
Yeah, you had to kind of remind me a little bit. You're like, no, you have seen him. I'm like, I have? And you're like, yeah, remember, then you told me the 76ers connection. And after I was done rolling my eyes about the Sixers and everything else, I was like, okay, I do remember. He's 6'2", just maybe a little shy of 200 pounds. I have to like the fact that he's at American Heritage. He's playing against really great competition. A lot of times you kind of wonder when you are recruiting somebody if they are going against just little Timmy somewhere versus going against dudes, and he's going against dudes. I'm going to have to watch a little bit more of his tape to remember maybe some of the finer points, but he's somebody who's closing in on 30 plus offers already. So I'm not somebody who falls in love with the offer train and, he's got 40 offers, therefore he's got to be this and not that. I mean, college coaches make mistakes too, but I think with Dia Bell and just, the circle that he runs around with and the players that he plays with and against, I do like this offer. And
I actually got a chance to see him recently at the Under Armour camp down in Florida. So I've got a fresher evaluation from last summer when we first saw him at camp, and he's put on some good weight. He's tremendous that day. He's the best quarterback there. Had a really good season in American Heritage. People were kind of waiting to see what he would do this fall. I know Ohio State didn't offer him at camp last year because I think they wanted to see some varsity film, and then Corey Dennis leaves, and I think that probably may have helped things here, getting Chip Kelly in there to take a look at this kid. So I think this is a guy who immediately moves into that, Will Griffin top targets territory. This is a school he has really liked. I mean, they came up here and camped for the sole reason that, Ohio State's quarterback reputation and just, Justin Fields and CJ Stroud and those guys like have appealed to him and his dad. And so while the offer's a little bit late, I do think this puts them in position to be a contender. And he's going to come back up for camp in June. He already told me that he's going to come back up and throw with Chip Kelly in June. He's going to come back again in the fall for at least one game. And as you continue to try and flip Malachi Tony, you've already got Brandon Inniss in Malachi's ear. This can't hurt. You've kind of got Malachi's mentor in Brandon Inniss, and you've also now got maybe get his quarterback there too. If you can continue to establish a good connection there, I mean, that would be something. That'd be an extra. That'd be like icing on the cake to already, if you get a great quarterback prospect, you make it his receiver too. So we'll see how that all develops. But that was the most interesting offer for me. I mean, and the other thing before we get into the other offer. The other thing I've kind of noticed here the last few weeks as visits have started is I think a lot of people were concerned when they hired Chip Kelly that he would be a non-factor in recruiting, that he would basically be a zero, and that, it will still going to have to be up to Ryan Day and maybe some of the assistants to recruit the quarterbacks. I have found that's probably not going to be the case. I think, and you've heard some stories about Chip Kelly from UCLA, maybe not spending a lot of time around recruits as he should be on visits or this, that, and the other. I think he genuinely hated the role of CEO that college football has become in the last 5 or 10 years, where these guys are fundraisers almost as much as they're football coaches. I think he hates that. I think he doesn't want to do the fundraising. He doesn't want to he's not anti-NIL, he's pro player, but I don't think he wants to have his hands in that. I don't think he wants to have his hands in a lot of that stuff. And so that's Ryan Day's job now. And I think Chip Kelly, if Chip's job can just be, hey, when a big time quarterback comes up, sit down with him and talk ball. I think Chip Kelly loves doing that. I think he loves talking about football with recruits and showing recruits, things, ideas he has or ways he could use them or things from their. I think he's going to do very well in that role.
No, I agree. I mean, we sit there and we look at the situation of where everybody wants to say, well, he's, the game was passing him by and he didn't want to do this and he didn't want to do that. I mean, the fundraising thing is an absolute drag, and having to go through and not having time to draw up plays and work on personnel and watch film and everything else to go out and glad hand. And certainly out west of all places. I mean, I know SoCal well from just my background, and having to deal with that whole culture is not necessarily what a lot of guys want to do, especially, and I'm not saying that Chip Kelly is like 80 years old or anything like that, but I mean, he comes out of a generation of where coaches were coaches and they weren't going through and doing all of the CEO type of stuff. So him being able to be rejuvenated and recharged, and everything he said during his introductory press conference at Ohio State, I think holds true and will carry over into recruiting. And we certainly have heard the statement about wanting to be able to buy the groceries. I mean, I'm sure he wants to be able to get out there and have a major impact in who it is that he's going to be out there coaching and having his job linked to, because at the end of the day, I mean, if the quarterback's not playing well, the OC and the quarterback coach, and especially if they're one and the same, are going to be looked at with a very critical eye. So, I think a lot of the early assumptions about Chip Kelly were probably misguided just because of it not being an apples to apples type of comparison.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is he was very engaged on Dia Bell's visit. I talked to Dia about it, and so I expect that'll be the case moving forward. And look, I'll share a quick story here about the lack of time these head coaches have now. I think it was the Under Armour camp last year. It was a spring camp. RJ Day was there. So Ryan Day was there. And it was May. And historically, May has been a time when the head coach can kind of relax a little bit, maybe take a family vacation for a week, especially toward the end of May, and kind of recharge their batteries before June 1 starts and the official visits start and the camps start and eventually ultimately rolling into fall camp. And so I just went over to Ryan. I was just like, hey, you enjoying some time off? It's May, blah, blah, blah. He's like, he kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, that time, basically paraphrasing, that time's over. He's like, I got fundraisers and NIL events all month. I was like, oh gosh. I was like, when do you get to vacation? He's like, pretty much never. So they're down to like a 2-week window, I think, in July now where these guys can actually take a break. So I think Kelly was like over that. It does take a special, I think, type of personality to be able to deal with the full year-round grind. So we'll see. But like I said, like what I'm hearing so far about Chip Kelly, both interacting with players and with recruits. So far, so good there. The second offer we'll get to now. It's Jonas Williams out of Illinois. This was not a guy I was very familiar with Diabell. This was not a guy who was really on my radar. So we'll see. He's a dual threat guy. So again, a lot of these guys, obviously they're going to always look for pass first guys, but they are trying to find guys with athleticism and guys who can make things happen when plays break down. And he's a guy who can do a little bit of that. He is, I think early on is kind of ranked as more of like a low 4-star type guy at this point. Dia, I think, is a little more highly rated at this point. But, this is a guy who, again, the talent in the state of Illinois seems to be kind of up the last couple of years. And, they're dipping into there. It looks like, obviously, in-state Illinois is going to be in there. Michigan's offered. I'm not sure what that means at this point, just because of all the staff turnover there. But he's also got a Tennessee offer and is being recruited by Alabama, LSU, and Notre Dame. So interesting player. Again, I don't have as much there as I do on Bell, because Bell has been a target over the past year. I think this one feels more like a, yes, we are widening our net type of offer.
Yeah, I mean, he comes out of a high school where there is at Lincoln Way East that some talent has come through there before. I mean, it's maybe not as much of a known quantity as playing in the Miami-Dade area the way that Diabell has, but a lot. I mean, he's picked up the regional offers, and I think that the net is starting to get a little bit wider as schools are taking notice. And we're going to know so much more after the camp cycle and everything else. I mean, and that's really what it comes down to, because we're talking about 2026 kids right now. Ohio State obviously has its 2025 in Tavian St. Clair. So there is so much development that still can happen, but in order to be invited to the party, especially with an out-of-state kid, you've got to offer and then just kind of go from there. But I'm very intrigued by Jonas. I know a couple of Illinois experts that I haven't really had a chance to connect with, but I'm sure I can get a full workup here in the coming days of what Jonas does well and what Jonas still needs to work on. I mean, heck, he's not even. I haven't looked at all the services, but he's not even ranked in one of them. I mean, the one that I have up in front of me right now. So maybe a little bit of an unknown still at this point, but if the law offices of Day and Kelly have decided that they want to learn more by offering him, I mean, that's certainly got to be worth something.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit it with the camps. I think June's going to be the big month for 2026 quarterbacks. Even someone like Will Griffin, who I know they really like, and who's coming up to visit here soon. Even there, I think they're going to want to see guys throw in person with Kelly there this time. Instead, I think Chip's going to want to watch guys throw in person. So now he can go out. I mean, this is the cool thing about Kelly being the OC and quarterbacks coach now, is that while Ryan Day is parked in Columbus here during the spring evaluation period, Chip Kelly can go out and watch guys throw. So that may supplement some of this that we're going to talk about. But I think, like Diabell is going to come camp in June. I think he's got to throw for Chip Kelly. I think Will Griffin, even though he threw last year, may have to throw for Chip Kelly. Whether that's Chip Kelly going down to Tampa Jesuit and watching him in May, or whether that's him coming up for camp. I know Will's already told me he would like to come up back for camp again. So That may be a thing that happens as well. So I think June's going to be the month to watch for quarterbacks, but we're starting to see Chip Kelly kind of have his, fingerprints on quarterback recruiting a little bit. And I suspect that'll continue. This will not be just the Ryan Day show and, Corey Dennis nod and smile at everything I say. This will be a collaborative effort. So, that's our quarterback segment. We want to talk about running backs too, though, because that's been thrown into a lot of uncertainty. You got two in-state guys, Marquise Davis, Bo Jackson. You got Byron Lewis in Florida. You've got Jordan Davison in California. All of these guys are impacted in some way by Alford's departure. And I think we're going to know a lot more here in the next week. So let's start with, I've got a quick Jordan Davison update, and I wish it was more concrete, but it is what it is. He was initially scheduled to visit like March 27th, I think through like April 1st or 2nd. He's not going to get here on the 27th. They're hoping he comes next week is the latest I've got. They're expecting him next week. Well, he has made it seem like he's coming next week. We'll see. That will be obviously big, whether he shows up or not. I think will tell us a lot about where that one stands. Obviously, Texas is going to be thrilled by the Tony Alford departure, and so is Alabama, especially now that it appears that they're not going to be able to get Robert Gillespie from Alabama to replace Alford. So those are the two big winners right now. They're going to have to get Davison back on campus. And again, they're hopeful that'll happen next week. We'll see if it does. Again, I kind of gave away the impact part of this there. Texas, Alabama winning. Ohio State gotta stabilize this a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had looked down for a second to see that you had thrown it to me. Yeah, I mean, it's hopefully, with the Alford departure, that just means that, that Michigan won't be involved in some of these guys, because we know Tony Alford will just fall in love again with Byron Lewis and then just see him leave to go to Miami, even though Miami just did pick up a commitment of a running back for the class of 2025. But yeah, you've got to get Jordan Davison out here. And while it certainly would have been telling to get him out here for 4 or 5 days and everything else, I mean, if Ohio State is able to get him out here and keep things going. Now, I think Ohio State certainly needs to make some progress in terms of what's going to happen in the running back coach search. And, I've told people the reality is the running back coach also is going to be one of your more dynamic recruiters on your staff. That's just kind of how things work out. But you kind of want to be able to say, this is going to be your guy right here. I mean, it's all well and good to be like, hey, I'm going to be your head coach, right? They say, I'm going to be your head coach. And Chip Kelly saying, I'm going to be your offensive coordinator. But you're going to spend more time with your position coach than you are with anybody else. So in some regards, I think it would be best for Ohio State to be able to make that visit happen once uncertainty is gone. But we also, as we, going back to the Jared Curtis conversation, once you lose momentum, it's hard to regain momentum. So the way you keep that momentum is getting him on campus as soon as you can.
And maybe that timeline of next week is telling us something about the timeline of a new hire.
Well, and I've thought that, and here, I'm going to let you in, break the fourth wall a little bit here. Mark and I did not pregame this show a lot, so he's dropping things that we haven't even necessarily talked about. So I didn't want to get too much into the coaching search, because I certainly have heard names, but I don't know how quickly it's coming along. But if they're going to do this, because I can assure you, flying from John Wayne Airport to Port Columbus is not, John Wayne International is not the cheapest flight in the world. So, and doing that with the family. I mean, it's not just putting Jordan on a plane and saying, well, go with God, we'll see you when you get home. I mean, this was supposed to be a family a family type of trip. So you're looking at costs, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, whatever. So, yeah, it certainly would benefit Ohio State, to make the hire soon, but don't race to make a hire and make the wrong hire. And now we don't necessarily have the gift of hindsight to be able to be like, well, that guy obviously was the wrong hire. But, the names that are being talked about out there all seem to be, very, impactful names in my opinion. And sorry, Bo Claret is not one of them. As much as he may go to Twitter on it.
Yeah, that won't be a name on the hot board. As far as the rest of the crew, this could be a big week. Bo Jackson on the 30th. This is the one I'm watching the closest right now. As I've said before, I haven't really hinted at it. I've kind of just come out and said it. I know Bo Jackson is a Ryan Day favorite. Has he always been a Tony Alford favorite? Has Tony Alford consistently pushed for Bo Jackson over the past year? I don't think he has. And I think there was some friction over that. Now that that's kind of out of the way, I think this March 30th visit with Bo Jackson is enormous, to the point that, I talked about this a little bit on the show, on the morning show with Tom, but to the point, obviously, I think TJ Alford's going to be the next domino to drop on the 30th. I think it's the 30th, 31st. But Bo Jackson could be a name that we start to really hear a lot of buzz about starting in about 5 days. That's one I'm watching very closely. I think that's one where he gets on campus, especially if they've got a running back coach in place soon, and just kind of sits down with Ryan Day, and they just, they have the talk about, like, we want to get you in the class, we want to get you in right away. I think that one could move quickly. That's the one I think could really move quickly. Jordan Davison, they've taken a step back there. They're going to have to regain momentum. Byron Lewis, little step back there. Probably easier to regain momentum there because of the connections to the high school and Brandon Innes and South Florida. Like that whole crew, I think, helps them regain momentum with Lewis. But there's no question you've taken a step back with both of those guys. And I think Marquise Davis, we talked about Alford taking someone to Michigan with him. I think Marquise Davis could end up at Michigan. But I've been told this for a year and a half that Jackson's a Day favorite. I fully believe it. The source is bulletproof on that. So I think now that there's not really any friction there, and there's not any conversations of, hey, why aren't you recruiting this guy harder? Like, he's like, I really like him. Like, why aren't you recruiting him harder? I think now that that's no longer there, I think this could move quickly with Bo Jackson.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I think some people have viewed the in-state guys as, and they're also, and the rest, kind of like on the original Gilligan's Island song. They went through all of these, and the professor and Marianne were and the rest before Bob Denver went and fought with them about getting every character named in the song. I know I go
Gilligan's Island reference on the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast.
I know.
It's not on my bingo card today.
It's been a minute, and I'm caffeinated. I had a coffee today, and I don't do that often. But I think that maybe there was some taking for granted. And if you talk to Ohio State recruiting fans, I think that there's a mix there too. That well, Bo and Marquise are always going to be there. I mean, because they would be, stupid not to go to Ohio State. I mean, being Ohio kids and all, but. I think that the deck has been reshuffled a little bit. I think the deck got reshuffled a little bit in losing Jordan Lyle out of the last class. I think you look at the makeup of the class or of the running back room this year. It's a one and done here for Quinshon Judkins. We know it's at the end of the line for Trevion Henderson. There was a hot minute last year where the word on the street was that Ohio State was talking, wink, 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 about only taking one back. That's not going to be the case moving forward. So I think in doing so, Ohio State suddenly is going to be a little bit more serious about its in-state pursuits. And I do agree that if things go as expected with Bo Jackson, that could heat up quickly.
And I think the notion that Bo Jackson's like a plan B is ridiculous. He's ranked higher than these guys. He's ranked higher than Byron Lewis, like almost across the board. He's ranked higher than Jordan Davison on some sites. So not a plan B, folks. And Marquise Davis is very good too. Like, these are not guys, these are highly ranked. Like, Bo Jackson could commit to Alabama tomorrow if he wanted to. These are highly ranked, highly sought after players. I don't think anyone should be. And I'm the guy who said at the beginning, and obviously I didn't know. I mean, Alford, like I was asked on the board, like who would be the next assistant to leave, and I said Alford. I didn't expect it to be this year. I thought it'd maybe be after the season, like he would try and go get a coordinator job or a head coaching job somewhere. I said finally he's just got to move up the ladder at some point. I didn't expect this to play out the way it did, but like I've been like, just take the 2 in-state guys maybe, and then if Jordan Davison or Byron Lewis wants to be a part of that, that's fine. But like I've kind of been pounding the table to just take the in-state guys. I don't know that they are still. I still think the most likely outcome is it's just one of them, but these are not plan Bs. There are people not just affiliated with Ohio State who feel these guys are as good or better than the out-of-state guys are recruiting. So we'll see. I mean, Marquise Davis remains an interesting name as well. Kind of see what this means for him. That's still kind of up in the air. But I think little step back with Byron Lewis, little step back, maybe a bigger step back with Jordan Davison. And I actually think a step forward with Bo Jackson, which I think will become a blessing in disguise because I think Bo Jackson is phenomenal. I think he's one of the top 2 or 3 players in Ohio. Maybe 4th at worst. I mean, he's right up there for me. I think he's a top 50, top 60, 70 type of national guy, a top 100 for sure, national guy. And there was part of me that was kind of looking at this like, are you guys really going to do this? Like, are you going to chase Jordan Davidson and Byron Lewis and lose one or both of them, and then Bo Jackson commits to USC or Alabama or whatever in the meantime? And are we going to make a mess of this? Like, because let's face it, running back recruiting has been a mess a lot the last 5 or 6 years, like taking early commitments and then kind of losing them or pushing them out of the class and kind of costing you some goodwill at Hoban there over Todd Sibley. Like there's been a lot of like things. And a lot of times, like we'd look at December when the dust settled and it was okay. Like the end result was good, but like the process was just kind of all over the place. And like, I was looking at this again this year. I'm like, God, are they gonna, they're not going to like lose Bo Jackson over all this, are they? I don't think they are now. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Kevin, any final parting thoughts here?
I think that just, kind of keeping it focused on running back and quarterback. I mean, I think that, we've seen some big names come through campus here recently at other positions. I think it was really important for them to have Sanchez on campus this past week and everything else. I think we're shaping up to see some movement coming up in the recruiting class. I have a lot of people who come up to me and it's like, oh, it's been a minute since Ohio State's picked up a commitment. I'm like, well, I mean, Ohio State could fill up its ranks in 2 hours if it wanted to. I mean, and that's just amount of time of spreading offers out there. But I think Ohio State's going to be fine, obviously, at both positions. I mean, talk about 25 running back. I think there's a little bit more urgency there. I mean, you do like to have your quarterback in your class earlier to be able to build around it. But 26, that's longer that you're going to have to play defense and hold everybody off. So I'm not as concerned there. I mean, obviously, Jared Curtis coming off the board, not ideal, especially if he's number 1 on Ohio State's board. But as for the running backs, I think that everything's going to work out fine. And I've watched Bo and Marquise both in the same group at camp last year, and I mean, I think you can't really miss with either of them. But Bo is spectacular. We'll keep an eye if this Jordan Davison move happens, and ultimately, I think everything will be predicated by the hiring of a running back coach and being able to get out there and see where things are. And I think that everything will be fine. And Ohio State, really has to do it right at running back this year just because of what it is losing. And you're not going to be able to go out there and get a Quinshon Judkins year in and year out, even if it is a 1-year rental and you're replacing one with the other. You have to be able to grow these guys at home. And I think Ohio State got itself a great one with James Peoples. I think that Sam Williams-Dixon certainly has a lot of talent. I think it's going to be a matter of figuring out how he fits best within the system. And then, oh, by the way, Dallin Hayden, pretty good when we see him. I think we'll see him more.
I do think we'll see Dallin Hayden a little more. By the way, not to derail this topic, but yeah, I think, a new decision maker on playing time could benefit Dallin Hayden. My parting thought is, as I told Tom on the morning show, the recruiting hot zone now is like mid-June through the end of July. And there's going to be a lot to talk about between now and then. We're going to have Southern Swing. We're going to have spring game weekend. We're going to have a lot of visits. We're going to have a lot of awesome, intel on the BuckeyeHuddle.com message board, brought to you by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. But like, if you're sitting there right now thinking, oh, it's been a little bit, well, look, they're probably going to get a couple here between today and the end of May. I would guess they get maybe like 2 or 3. The hot zone is always going to be mid-June and in July as the current calendar sits, because that's when official visits are happening. And then a lot of kids are either deciding on or after their officials or right before their season starts. So in July, so they can go take a vacation and then go into fall camp for their high school and not have to worry about recruiting. So that's going to be the hot zone. And despite the lack of like tangible, commitments that you can kind of, count, the momentum is still incredibly strong in this class. The receiver group right now is insane. Like, they're in on like every top receiver in the country. So Brian Hartline's doing his thing again. Defensive end recruiting is looking very solid right now. So there's a lot of good stuff that maybe hasn't resulted yet in something tangible like a commitment, but
still in really quick too. Ohio State, as we're recording, just offered another 26 quarterback, Noah Grubbs, out of Lake Mary, Florida.
Well, and I can speak to that because I just talked and watched Noah last month. This was one we've told you on the board to kind of keep an eye on, was Noah Grubbs. So that offer's happened. He's on campus today, so we'll catch up with Noah and we'll have something on Noah here in the next day or two on the site. So if you want to go back onto the site and read my report from that Under Armour camp, you can just search just search for Noah Grubbs on the site. You can it'll pop up. And that'll have kind of my thoughts on Noah so far. But good offer. A lot of people down in Florida really like Noah Grubbs. He's got a national offer list, so that's one that makes total sense and was kind of expected. We kind of warned you guys about a month or so ago that keep an eye on that one. So, all right, good timing on that. We're going to sign off here. Appreciate everyone watching. Again, if you're watching on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps other people find us. Please consider joining BuckeyeHuddle.com. Great time to join with spring practice and Southern Swing coming up, where we cover all the top recruits in the South, go on this 2-week driving tour around the South, interviewing all your favorite guys to follow. And, camp season's right around the corner. And then obviously one of the most anticipated Ohio State football seasons in recent history is just a couple months away. So from really getting going here, about a few months away. So if you're liking the content, again, please subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on podcast form, if you give us a 5-star rating, that'll also help people find us. We appreciate that. But appreciate everyone's support. Appreciate everyone watching and listening. And we will talk to you again soon.